The time he came down the elevator, I always look at Donald Trump as really he's been on the same message from the first time he ran. And it was the system is rigged against you. The people in Washington think you're deplorable. They think you're garbage. I thought when the garbage comments came down, I thought this is like the perfect encapsulation of everything Donald Trump has been talking about for 8 years, because his whole thesis is that Washington is rigged against you. That's why you're losing jobs. Immigrants are coming in here, taking your jobs from you. That's why the economy is tanking. It's because the people in Washington don't care about you. And I think it's a case he's been making over 8 years. And finally, with inflation and the border being out of control and an unhappy electorate, 70% of this country believing we're heading in the wrong direction, it all came to fruition on Tuesday.
Well, and if I can just cut in there for a second, what I don't think I've heard the Democrats reckon with is that they played a role in that unpopularity. They played a role in that wrong track number. It was the policies of this administration, at least in part, that produced the inflation and the border chaos that people were so mad about. It wasn't some
the policies of this administration have also produced hundreds of thousands of jobs, have also reduced the cost of prescription drugs, have also worked towards housing affordability, have also pushed towards affordable childcare, which the Republicans tanked. Also had an immigration package that the Republicans actually drew up themselves that was tanked at a phone call by President Trump. I think that there are a lot of wins, particularly infrastructure. Every week was infrastructure week under Trump, and we never saw it, that are negated by the fact that those policy connections and wins, particularly for the working class, were not understood or felt by the working class.
Right.
There was a ceding of those victories to Trump in a very odd way, because the messaging wasn't working, because it wasn't tracking on the ground for people in reality. There was a lot there that this administration has done that did not come out in the polling or in how people actually voted.
Well, and this goes back to kind of people's overall frustration right now. What you referenced, that, you know, our exit poll, Molly, showed more than 70% of Americans felt like the country was on the wrong track, despite all of the policy that you are laying out, Amisha. I mean, was it just a failure? And of course, the vice president never really came up with that answer to how she would govern differently than President Biden.
Yeah, I mean, this was an electorate that wanted change. And, you know, I've heard it said that Kamala Harris struggled to distance herself from Joe Biden. She really refused to distance herself from Joe Biden. She was given opportunity after opportunity to do that. He even explicitly said, I believe on this program, that it was okay with him if she did that, and she didn't want to, perhaps because, as you say, she believed in the accomplishments of the administration, and she believed that they should get more credit for that. But it was just not credit that the electorate was willing to give them. And so in an environment where people wanted change, that was what they voted for.
So, Lance, here we are, and President-elect Trump is about to head back to the White House. Republicans have control of the Senate. Seems very possible they could have control of the House, and now they have to govern. I spoke to the president-elect yesterday on the phone, made it very clear the border was his top priority. But what do you think realistically they can get done, particularly if they have a narrow majority in the House?
I thought he made a really great first step in bringing Susie Wiles in as the chief of staff. I think that sent a really positive message, especially to folks up on the Hill, that, you know, he's looking to have a much different type of administration going forward. I think that's certainly somebody like me. It's like, I love it. I think people on the Hill love that. So I took that as a very first positive sign. I think you're right. I think the immigration is going to be number one. If you see the stories coming out yesterday, I mean, he's going to immediately put back all the executive orders that were undone by the Biden administration. And then they're going to move forward. And I know about we're talking about the mass deportation. I'm guessing that is something that's going to be slower over time. They're talking about moving forward with the criminals who are here, and I think that's certainly something that the public wants to see. We also have the tax package. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is expiring in a few months, and I think that's going to be the biggest piece of legislation we're going to be talking about going into the spring.
Amisha, how are Democrats preparing for the possibility that they might be out of power in all three branches of government? Will there be any area where they can work with the president-elect, do you think?
Well, I don't think they're going to have a choice. The predictions show, and, you know, some of the numbers coming out of these House races are not necessarily positive for Democrats. Having lost up and down the board is an unfortunate place for them to be. What we have seen is that state government, particularly I'm thinking of California with Governor Newsom, as well as Illinois with Governor Pritzker, they are working towards safeguarding particularly undocumented populations, but also civil rights and protections for individuals who Donald Trump has been very explicit about going after, whether it was through Project 2025 or through his own language out of his mouth and what we've seen in his previous administration.
Molly, we only have a few seconds left. What are you going to be watching for when Trump goes back to office.
I mean, the only thing I'd add to that sort of picture of the day one agenda is I think he's going to immediately eliminate the traditional independence of the Justice Department and make it an instrument of his will, pardon the J6ers. You know, he's already gotten rid of all the cases against him. And tariffs. That is another thing that he can do unilaterally without Congress. If he actually follows through on it, I know a lot of our readers on Wall Street think it's just a negotiating posture, but he has been pretty clear that it's something he wants to do. And so we're going to hear a lot of squawking, I think, from the business community if he goes through with that.
We'll watch it all very closely. Thank you all for a very spirited discussion here. Appreciate it. Still